Under the sterile glare of the conference room lights, the laughter was sharp, cutting through the air like a scalpel. A group of NASA scientists sat clustered around the table, their polished shoes and pressed suits an unspoken badge of their intellect and status. At the far end of the room, a man in worn grey coveralls stood holding a folded piece of paper. His hands were weathered, the skin darkened and scarred by years of work, but his grip was steady. If this story moved you, if you believe in standing up for what's right, even in silence, subscribe now, not just for more stories, but to keep the voices of dignity, respect, and courage alive. It was meant to be a short maintenance stop. He had been replacing a faulty air filter near the observation bay when he overheard them talking about the glitch. The data coming in from the Horizon Array, NASA's most advanced deep space telescope, had been strange for weeks. The readings from a black hole just beyond the galactic rim made no sense. It was supposed to be dormant, a silent giant slowly feeding in the dark. But something was shifting in its gravitational field, and the probe they'd sent, billions of dollars worth of human ambition, was on a trajectory dangerously close to the anomaly. The man, Samuel Hart, had asked quietly if he could take a look at the data. That alone had been enough to draw smirks. When he returned a day later with a sheet of calculations scrawled in pencil, the laughter grew louder. One of the younger physicists leaned back in his chair, his voice dripping with mockery as he asked if Hart had calculated this between mopping the floors. Samuel said nothing. He merely placed the paper on the table and stepped back, his gaze fixed not on the mocking faces, but on the anomaly displayed on the wall monitor. Numbers did not lie. And these numbers told a story no one in that room wanted to believe. Beneath the lines of his face were years no one here could see, years when his world had been math and the cosmos, when his name had appeared in journals that now lay forgotten in dusty archives, years when a classroom of young cadets hung on his every lecture about celestial mechanics. Then came the fire, the loss that hollowed him out, and the long walk away from everything. Samuel had been a teacher before he was a janitor, an officer before he was a teacher, and a father before grief had stripped titles from his soul. His daughter, Elise, had been 14 when she decided she would be the one to unlock the mysteries of black holes. They used to sit together under the desert sky outside their small home, pointing telescopes toward the ink-black void, trading questions about light, time, and gravity as though they were secrets passed between co-conspirators. Her death, sudden, senseless, had been the kind of pain that pushes a man into silence. The silence stayed, even now, as the room filled with polite dismissal. The lead scientist assured him they had other best people on it, and told him to leave the real work to those who understood it. Samuel turned, his boots heavy on the linoleum, and walked out without a word. But the paper stayed. 2 days later, the Horizon Array's operators saw the shift. It was faint at first, a distortion in the probe's telemetry, a minute alteration in time dilation measurements. Then the anomaly grew teeth. The gravitational field of the black hole, which should have been stable, began pulsing like a heartbeat, pulling at the probe's trajectory in ways the current equations couldn't explain. By the time the flight director realized the danger, the probe was hours away from the event horizon's lethal grasp. The only math that matched the readings was Samuel Hart's. In the control room, faces were pale, eyes wide. Pride was a fragile thing in moments like these. The lead scientist didn't hesitate. Pride could wait. He sent someone to find Hart. When they did, he was quietly fixing a leaking pipe in the sub-basement, a wrench in one hand, a rag in the other. He didn't seem surprised to be summoned. The air in the control room was tight with unspoken apologies when he walked in. This time, no one laughed. They handed him the data stream, and Samuel scanned it, his eyes narrowing as the patterns took shape in his mind. The black hole wasn't simply pulling. The pulsations suggested something orbiting within its accretion disk, distorting the field in rhythmic bursts. If timed perfectly, a burn could slingshot the probe away from the danger, miss the window, and it would be crushed by tidal forces no man could withstand. Samuel spoke at last, his voice low and even, the way he used to lecture a room full of cadets who thought the stars would wait for them. The plan was simple in theory, lethal in execution. It required precision so exact that even the slightest miscalculation would end in disaster. The engineers worked under his guidance, recalculating burn sequences, adjusting trajectory vectors. In the final minutes before the maneuver, the control room fell into a tense stillness. Samuel stood near the back, arms crossed, watching the screens as if watching the night sky from his old backyard. The countdown reached 0, thrusters fired, and for an eternal moment, nothing changed. Then slowly the readings shifted. The probe's velocity changed in just the way the equations predicted. It had worked. A ripple of relief passed through the room, but Samuel's eyes stayed on the monitor until the probe was safely beyond the gravitational spikes. Only then did he breathe out, his shoulders sinking with quiet release. Around him, murmured thanks carried more weight than applause. The next morning, the lead scientist approached him in the corridor. There was no smirk now, only a man humbled in the presence of another's quiet mastery. He offered his hand, and with it, an unspoken acknowledgement that respect should never have been withheld in the first place. Samuel shook it once, then returned to his work cart. He didn't need their praise. He had seen the black hole and lived to guide another past it. In his mind's eye, he saw Lily smiling under a blanket of stars, her dream alive in the silence between them. In the weeks that followed, whispers of the janitor who saved the mission spread through NASA halls. Some embellished it, some stripped it bare, but all carried the same truth. Titles didn't measure worth, and sometimes the quietest person in the room carried the most gravity. For Samuel Hart, it was never about proving them wrong. It was about doing what had to be done, even when no one was watching. Some battles were fought in deserts, some in courtrooms, and some in the infinite dark between stars. And in that dark, his silence was louder than any applause could ever be.